damaged, but I'm here.
Let's rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Today we continue our adventure.
Yes, it's
Is that
been
what we
some
call it,
time.
adventure?
Yes.
Yeah, our summer adventure with the next work session for the comprehensive rezoning. So, I'll turn it over to Director Eisenberg. Linda, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So just to recap, the last time we met was in February, and we've been very busy since our last meeting on February 21st. So in front of you today, for your leisurely reading, we provided you with the summary of all the comments we've received over the last 5 months. I'll go over it very briefly just so you can see what's in here. A lot of the comments are the basis for the additional issues that we'd like to address toward the end of this process. Also in your binder, which we sent up last week prior to the holiday break, are text clarifications and corrections that we've been working on through this process, an updated companion document to 158, a new updated 158, also a revised 155, which is the subdivision regulations. So the order of today is I'm just going to briefly go over just the summary sheet in the comment book so you can understand the basis of some of the discussion for today. And then we'll go over the binder of updates. And depending on what time we have, this is pretty ambitious. We have 2 hours for today, but we also have 2 hours on Thursday. Wherever we end today, we'll pick up with on Thursday. If we get to the outstanding issues, we'll try to get as far as we can in this itinerary as far as that goes. Just so you know, too, the 158, which is our zoning code, and the 155, the subdivision regulations, all the changes we have today, including the companion document, have been posted on our website for several weeks now. The only thing that's not posted, and we will, but we wanted to bring these to you first, are the outstanding issues that we'll be addressing toward the end of all of these discussions. So this has been made public and has been out there. So in your new binder, I just wanted to have you all have, so you can go over at your convenience.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Before we go any further here, items with discussion. Several years, we've had the Code Steering Committee meet with codes downstairs. And we always have kind of a roundtable discussion where we have people coming in, airing concerns, whether it's builders, everybody that comes in that wants to deal with the code committee, and we have dialogue back and forth. I would like to suggest that we have the same type thing somewhere with this, that we hear from, if we want a totally transparent type program put out, that we have a meeting sometime where people can sit around the table and ask questions and give their comments on the amendments and things we're doing here on this. So would that be possible to put out in the next, say, month or so?
Well, if I may suggest that when, it's totally up to the Board of County Commissioners, the 5 of you, on what process you want to proceed with. And if you want to do that, that's fine. My suggestion would be that you're not quite ready for that, since you're sort of in the middle of your process. As Linda is going to review for you, we met last in February. Then you've had subsequent meetings, the letters out to the letters out to the public, open public meetings, conversations with all those folks. Then we've received these public comments, and I think the plan is to, based on all of that feedback, to then further refine this. And then once you guys have further refined it, and you're to a point where you think it's ready really for that next step, then that might be the appropriate time to have that.
Well, shouldn't that be part of the process moving through this, so we're not just, always at the end, as we're building it, have input to build it? And
Well, we've had.
Yeah, we have input somewhat here, But I mean, dialogue between the committees and just so everybody hears what concerns are. I mean, you get a letter and we have a whole a pamphlet here. I'm sure some of them will get through it, a lot of it, but you never read probably 100% of it. But just so we have input from concerned people out here as we're building this, that we're doing it right. And, it could be a month down the line, 2 months, whatever it is, but so that we have feedback from people we may not even know concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, that's totally up to you. That's the process is planned at the moment, was for you guys to then delve back in based on the comments you've received to this date.
Didn't we start with that kind of thing at the very beginning? We put a committee together for each one of these things of stakeholders
We did.
in the community, and they gave their input right then and there of
Correct.
what was already done. So we've had that at the very beginning. Now we're refining the documents according to what those stakeholders had, get information they've given us, and the information from this thing right here. We've made, or not we, you and your group have made the changes to this at this point.
Correct.
So, I mean, they had them at the very start.
Well,
I'm not saying don't have them again, I would like to have them again, but I think we need to refine what we have first, and then say, okay, from all the information we have gathered so far, or you have gathered so far, this is where we've come to. Now, this is what we've come up with, and bring the stakeholders back in and say, let's revise it again.
When was the start? When you said?
Oh my gosh, years ago, we started, right after the master plan adoption in 2015.
But
Well, but you met with the stakeholders, on this, when?
That wasn't that long
That
ago.
wasn't that long ago.
Well, we have meetings, the public outreach meetings.
Sending it out to the.
And we sent it out, I mean, the chronology was, once Planning Commission had a draft that they were forwarding as a recommendation to the board over a year ago, we sent out the letters, and then we had the 3 or 5, no, the community outreach meetings prior to this process with the work sessions.
Here's 5.
Yeah,
February
5, yeah.
2006.
5, gosh, there's 5 of them. Again, to kind of go over the process, show the tentative draft. Then we sent it to stakeholder groups, gosh, I guess almost a year ago, September, prior to going, no, 2 years September. 2 years September prior to coming out again, and then having these work sessions, working with Planning Commission. So throughout the process, we've had it post a meeting with stakeholder groups. I mean, certainly, if you're not comfortable with where this is, we can continue to do those sorts of outreach efforts. Since the draft version that you all approved, during that time, we sent out letters to all of the properties that, again, were currently Zone B and RBG, IR and IG, so about 1,200 letters went out directly to those properties with maps. Since that time, we received 160 phone calls, which we have a phone log in your binder of comments. So maybe it's now a good time to kind of go over the binder of comments. We're not going to go through this in detail. We just wanted to provide you with a full accounting of what we've seen and heard over this 5-month time period. We had 2 outreach meetings in the month of March, one here at the county office building, if you recall, and one at South Carroll Community and Senior Center. Over 130 people attended both meetings. It was interesting that, as you all are aware, the Westminster meeting happened to be the one more heavily attended than the South Carroll meeting. We have also received 160 phone calls, which we've kept a detailed phone log about what the question was, who was calling, what property they were interested in, and what resolution came out of that phone call. We tried to break down the booklet based on the main topics that we've seen and heard, and so that is the pie chart. And then we tried to categorize the comments accordingly. You may see just one comment or so in each category, but also the pie chart is representative of the call log as well in our tabulation. So we tried to break it down by auto service. We heard a lot of those comments, concrete manufacturers, contractor equipment storage, a lot of comments were just general comments, so we just kind of put those in a general section. We had a lot of map inquiries that we were able to field and answer questions on. Non-conforming uses obviously was a concern. A lot of questions from people just in general, if this will change their property taxes. Self-storage was a big question. And then, as you all are aware, we've received a lot of letters from attorneys in the county with questions and suggestions. So that is also just a special section tabbed off for them in this as well. As well as sign-in sheets and people we've added to mailing lists are included in this document. And this was the basis for many of the text clarifications and corrections that we have gone back to the concept team group to discuss, to say, does this still make sense? Where are we with this? We had a lot of discussions over the last several months regarding that. And then it's also part of what are some of the outstanding issues that we would like to discuss with the board for you all to make some decisions and have some consideration on how to move forward on the more ones that we just can't make the decision on and feel it's more appropriate with the board.
On your pie chart here, it says chart below represents percentage of comment submissions by category. Is that, could the same person say in one of the smaller ones,
Yes.
the same person, you count that as one comment, or you count that as 20 comments because the same person put 20 comments in? 'Cause
We
it could
try to
skew
divide what the
results.
comment was and what the bigger issues were. I mean, this isn't a perfect science, it's just more to give you a general,
Right.
so I wouldn't count
But-
this as statistically
Right,
significant in
but
any
if it's the
way.
same
but-
person with
Yes.
20 comments, it looks like, oh, that's a lot of comments
Yes.
on that one thing, but you looked at it that way, so it's just, if the same person put 20 comments in,
Of the
that's-
same thing, no, we only
that's
count it, you're right.
one time.
One
Okay,
time.
But
okay.
if that person.
Had
put in-
multiple comments on the same comment card of different areas, we would try to categorize
On
them
different
multiple.
areas, right,
Correct,
gotcha,
correct.
okay.
Have they all been addressed back to the person that put the comment in?
To the best of our ability, yes. I mean, if we had contact information to get a hold of them, yes. If they've called us, we followed up with that. And that's on the call log. We talk about what the resolutions are for each of those.
And a lot of the issues, there's no resolution yet because they're in the outstanding issues that you're going to be discussing in the next few work sessions. So we don't have a resolution yet because they're higher policy
Right.
things than we're going to decide.
Well, anyway, I would still like to have a date put out that we have a roundtable discussion on this, and before we get too far, and it could be in the future, but somewhere we have the ability for people to respond to where we are at that time in this. I think that would be just open dialogue on it.
I mean, above and beyond the same format we had for those 2 community sessions?
Yeah, not just where you have a microphone there, but we have actually a room with people who could sit at the table and just have discussion on these things. Like, the code steering committee, we do that, works very well. People have concerns and bring them up, we address them there, and it's open, and it's tough to do.
Well, but that's a committee, you know, it's a group of X number, a specific number of folks. I think it sounds like you're inviting the entire public, which
Well,
could
if
be-
people want to address things, could. I mean, I don't think it would be that many, but if it is, it needs to be. I mean, that's part of doing this. It's going to affect people. We have to have their input somewhere along the line in it. You know, free
Well,
discussion.
Just so you know, there will be, I think what you are not referring to the public hearing. Keep in mind, there will have to be a public hearing before your
No,
ordinance
not
changes.
referring, this is,
So you're
we're in the
referring-
process here, so we have input from the general person here, or,
Basically, again, like the 2 community outreach efforts, just not limited to, you know, time in a microphone and
yeah.
open session, which, you know, obviously adds to the risk of being a very long marathon type of event, but
Well, yeah,
it could be risk well taken.
if people
So-
have concerns, we need to hear them, we need to address them, and talk about it. And I don't think it would be that many if we refine this the way it's going. I think it'll be probably 20 people show up, maybe 30, and have a concern. A lot of it will be small concerns, but some people will have some major issues, and maybe something we missed. We need to go back and look at, because this is a very important document. This is going to drive the county for the next 10 years or longer, and our development and everything, so it's very important that we get this right. And I think public input on that is extremely important as we go. And I could set a date sometime in the future, but we may not be part of the way through, or what we have to review at that time, and maybe we need to do it more than once.
I mean, I'm open to it. It seems similar to the forum we had with the two other public sessions, just not limiting to
Not limiting somebody to 3 minutes.
3
or
minutes
whatever.
and having it much more.
Though for those
We
meetings,
didn't-
we
we
did
didn't
not
limit.
limit.
They
Those were
weren't
back
limited.
and forth discussions.
So,
Yeah, that's my only concern.
It's
You've
not
already
quite the
done
same.
this, so you want to do it again? Is that what you're
It's
saying?
not quite the same. We need to have a table
Well, what's the
discussion.
difference though? I'm challenged.
The difference
Not that I'm
is-
disagreeing with you, but.
yeah.
Somebody's at a microphone to give we give a short response there, and it's forgotten about or dealt with somewhat. And I think a lot of times just sitting down with the books in front of everybody, having to, where we are, meeting those, and they have their concerns, and they can have them met right there and then, and not be, well, thank you, and we don't know what happens with it
Well,
later, and
so
we
That's what we do.
deal with it. but-
So in order to do that, with the content that I think you're expecting, we would publicize it, we would request RSVPs,
Mhm.
who would be in attendance.
Right.
Therefore, then we would have the books and resources available and seating
Yeah.
available for them. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, that would be fine. A perfect way of doing it.
I mean, if we think we're gonna get the number of concerned
I don't think it'll be
folks.
that many. I think people who have concerns will address them there, and the rest of the people have been addressed already. They won't show up for this.
Well, that's, if I may suggest, and again, you can do it the way you want, is let's go through today, see how far we get through today and tomorrow and the next scheduled work session. And if the board feels that
Yeah.
that's the way they want to go, we'll schedule it. I mean, the next one is today, Thursday, and next Tuesday or Thursday?
Thursday.
So we're not talking about a lot of time, just see where you end up at that point and schedule it or not, depending on what you want to do at that point.
I think
that
a
all?
lot of the issues have been addressed as far as technical, but some issues can never be addressed in that situation because it would be a higher policy decision too. So ultimately, the board would have to come back and make decisions with regards to if those are appropriate changes. So I guess it depends on what is considered being addressed. As far as our discussions, we did, to the best of our ability at those times, addressed issues. Some were more corrective and technical, and some, again, are part of these outstanding issues that things may be resolved through this, and some things may never be resolved because people have different interests in where they like to see the direction go. So the two may never meet in addressing certain issues for constituents and people.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, let's just keep it on the table, be aware that that may be the next step, but let's start with what we're
Yeah.
planning on doing this morning and see where we go.
See where we go and how
I
we
mean, I-
progress.
I think I understand where you want to go with this, it's just, like Commissioner Lance shared, we've done it, what more are we gonna gain from doing it again? Or do we need to change the format somewhat to get more insight, but let's see where we're gonna go first
Okay.
now, and we'll revisit it later. I mean, my suggestion.
Okay. I mean, we're happy to do whatever the direction is of the board with regards to that and putting something together. But you may be pleasantly surprised about what has been addressed and what's still left to do, so, we
That's
hope.
an assumption on your part. Hopefully a good assumption.
I hope so. I'm going to be optimistic in this effort. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary to kind of go over the binder of updates that you all received last week and hopefully brought today. I think everyone did. And just where we've been since the 2/21/19 date.
Okay, I will make this brief so we can jump into the more important topics. What you have is a one-page 19 clarifications and corrections made to the zoning text. And all of these are things the concept team felt comfortable either refining, clarifying, adding. They were mistakes that were pointed out. There were uncertainties in some of the definitions. So I won't go through them all, but it's 1 through 19, and then the corresponding text amendment has highlighting, and this is all on the website. The corresponding text amendment to 158 has highlighting where each one of these changes were made. And unless you would like me to, I really don't think any of these would need to be discussed by you, and if you want to look at it between now and our next meeting, and let me know, but,
Why don't you give us an example
Yeah.
or two, if I
Okay.
may
Yeah, I think we should
suggest?
go through it,
Actually, do you? Okay. The first one where we added asterisks wherever the existing text followed the change, there was confusion at the public meeting that we were taking out all the old text of the zoning code.
I apologize, where are you looking?
It's
Page
a,
1 on the clarifications and corrections made,
Show.
and the new
Is it this?
materials that we provided.
oh, no, that is the companion document. It's just a one-page.
It's a one-pager. It should be the first thing in your packet. This?
Oh.
No, I didn't, then it's not.
I don't see that.
I don't have it.
Okay, I'll go do it. I'll make a copy. Okay.
Yeah, the first thing, Linda, well,
Yeah,
I
took it apart
didn't.
and
Mine's
looked at
in
it,
the
and I
same
don't see
order.
that at all.
Is it near the back, perhaps?
So I have commercial industrial employment campus is the first thing.
Right. but
Then I
it's-
have
Should
text
be-
amendment. No, well, not in our package. Then text
I don't
amendment,
see that either.
then the
You
comp
should-
rezoning changes, and then 155.
Whether we should or.
We don't.
That's right.
Sorry.
Where all the paper we're using to get this.
Yeah, my goodness.
After we cut down a lot.
Maybe it's not
It's,
public needs it, maybe we do.
It's so annoying when something doesn't
Killing
get
a lot of trees.
So I can do it without that and just go through the text
And we'll
amendment
get it
itself.
for you. No, let's just, we'll wait and then we'll.
Yeah, that's why you see it.
Yeah, she'll come up with it shortly. I apologize, so you do have the 158, the companion document,
The
correct?
clarification and correction. No,
No, the
we have
clarification and
the-
corrections.
no,
Companion document.
companion document, right. We do have that, that's the
And
first.
then the zoning regulations with the highlights, 158,
Yes.
and then you should have 155.
Do you want to jump around to page 155?
The next thing we have is this, Linda, the chart,
Yes, then you have the chart.
and
So-
then 155.
It must have been paper clipped somewhere. Okay, well, we apologize about that.
There's probably a pile sitting somewhere down in your office, right?
Jump to 155?
So
as not to waste
yeah,
time.
do you want to jump to 155 since that's kind of standalone?
Sure.
Okay, we're going to jump in because this is kind of standalone from the other items then, just to keep it
This is where we,
same.
155.
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody got chapter 155 out? A number of the changes that occurred in chapter 155 were a direct result of the changes that were occurring in chapter 158, specifically nomenclature changes, the BG, BNR to C1, C2. So these were what are called companion changes. Chapter 155 is what the Bureau of Development Review enforces, which is called Development and Subdivision of Land. I could start on page 1 and work my way down around. Sure. All right.
Let's start.
The first there were 5 definitions that were modified. 4 of them are on page 1. The buildable lot, as you can see, was because of the BNR BG change to the C1, C2, C3, as well as the IGIR. No change to the definition. No change at all. The next 2, design manual and director, were made as clarifications. We just struck out the word the design manual so that we don't have to update the code anytime that name changes.
I have to ask this question.
Yes, sir.
Buildable lot, new text, or if in, deleted text,
That's my mistake.
or if in. Okay, I'm looking at
No,
that thinking,
No, that was a,
what am I missing? Because
you're
it
not
makes no
missing
sense to me.
anything.
Okay, we're good.
All right. Next one, under Director, that is for clarification. It is the Director of the Department under which the Bureau of Development Review resides. Instead of saying the Director of Land Use Planning and Development, in case there's a name change to that, it is where the Bureau resides, because the Bureau enforces this code. Okay. The next, planned public project, added and all other duly adopted county plans, such as the water sewer plan, etc. The next one is the wellhead buffer, and that is in conformance with the Water Resource Manual. Currently is a conflict, the code, our code is in conflict with that manual, with that code. So this just correlates the two. The next, on page 2 also, off conveyance definition, or off conveyance. No change at all to the process, nothing, just a nomenclature change again, BNR BGI to C1, C2, C3. Concept plan. When it's the way our process works, originally it said residential subdivisions. We treat minor subdivisions, we also allow minor subdivisions in the industrial and the commercial process. We've never enforced the major process to those projects. This just puts in place what we've been enforcing for years, that any project that's a minor gets treated the same, whether or not it's residential or whether or not it's commercial industrial. It's a much shorter process, by the way.
Do we need to define minor?
Minor is 3 lots or less.
It's already defined.
But, I'm sorry.
It's already defined. in-
I'm sorry, yes, it already defined, I'm sorry, I apologize. Thank you. The next definite, or the next change is regarding sunset provisions. The sunset provision is expiring of plans. We've modified both the concept subdivision and the concept site plan to allow for, actually, instead of saying when the plan is initially submitted, to when the concept plan is reviewed by the planning commission. It actually gives a little bit, it gives a longer time frame to the review process to occur.
You going to tell the people that are submitting the plans when it's actually reviewed?
I'm sorry.
Whoever's submitting the plan will then be notified when the plan would be actually
That is
reviewed.
correct, we do that, that is correct.
Right.
And this gives them a little bit longer time
So
frame.
they
to-
know what the,
They know
when the
that,
clock
yes.
starts.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and actually what can happen with this is with it's a concept subdivision plan, because we take it to the planning commission, we can also include that into the minutes as well. So, we can include that in our report.
So the sunset provision actually doesn't start until they go to the review process?
That's correct.
Okay, so
That's correct. Under, the next one is site development plans. Instead of conformity with the master plan, it is consistency with the master plan. I believe that is the correct term that's supposed to be in the code. The next whole litany of changes has to do with parking space requirements. We made several initial changes, none to the standards. I want to be very clear. We changed no parking calculations at all. What was changed initially, which you see on page 3, instead of the director determining the spaces if there's modification, it is the planning commission. The reason on that is who is reviewing the plan, is the planning commission. And we don't want to put a conflict into the director feels one way and the planning commission feels the other way. Let the planning commission, because the planning commission has full control over site plans. So this puts it back in the hands of the planning commission. The next several pages, which are charts, and there's a number of strikeouts and underlines. There was clarification, for instance, on page 4, animal boarding and grooming. We changed it to commercial kennel to be consistent with the language that's in chapter 158. Automobile trailer implement is vehicle sales lot, to be consistent with 158.
Why do we have to change from 1 for every 500 square feet to 2 for every 1,000 square feet.
That
The
is.
Same thing?
It's the exact same thing. The reason we did that was because if you look through most of our calculations, it's based on 1,000 square feet. We just said for consistency, let's just try to keep it at 1,000.
All right. And same thing for 1 for 5 and 2. Gotcha.
Yeah, we
All right.
did not go in and look at new parking regulations. It was just trying to make it easier to follow. On top of page 5, where it has fast food restaurant, we crossed out the entire parking regulation because it's a restaurant. Fast food establishment is nothing more than a restaurant. So we're calculating it based on restaurant. As you can see, we changed planned business center to planned commercial center. Hotel, again, a lot of these changes were done for consistency with 158. On page 6, and if I'm missing anything, please stop me again, Commissioner Fraser, as if you see where I'm going. We moved it from at the discretion of the director to the discretion of the planning commission. Again, planning commission has ultimate authority for site plans, just putting the onus where that would be best solved at. We added two new parking. One is self-service storage facility. We added it, the same with that and golf course, we added it for 2 reasons. They were added into the zoning, chapter 158, as separate uses. Since they were added, we needed a parking calculation. As far as golf course, we went through 5, 6 different county jurisdictions. We picked the one that had the least amount of parking required.
I like the 4 spaces per hole.
There was some, if I
Interesting
might,
way.
there were some, and Commissioner Wentz might, there were some that were 8 spaces per hole. We knew that was overparked to no extent.
That would be absurd.
That would be, and so, and again, the thing with this parking, planning commission could also take a look at it as well. Any questions moving through, on off-street loading? We eliminated for clarification, gross, to make it just state floor area. Page 8 is the plan unit development, which you might hear as PUD. Changes was just from business to commercial center, again, because of chapter 158. The next one, you'll see a lot of strikeouts, was the planned commercial centers, which is on page 8, 9, 10, and finishes on 11. You'll see a lot of strikeouts. Some of the changes that occurred in here was nomenclature changes. Again, business to commercial center. In the middle of page 8, it was changed from B&R BG to commercial districts. 8 and 9, well, 8 and 9 were crossed out totally because, or mostly totally because of redundancy. One is if you read that any PWA determined necessary by the planning commission, that's already in the code. So it's already in another section of the code, struck out because of redundancy. The permitted uses are in the table that is in 158. Just, again, redundancy. General regulations, building height was struck out, redundancy.
Redundancy because.
It's in 158. Track coverage. We took that out because we did not see any need for it. That was I will say that was a straight decision that we made, is that we felt that that was and I'm not suggesting that limit that was put in place it was a numbered artificial limit that we just felt, let the site dictate the amount of coverage for the building. Customer parking space, that's in another section of the code. Loading space in another section of the code. Signs, that was moved to chapter 158. And then, under the accessory uses, that is no changes to that, other than, instead of saying PBC, Planned Business Center, it references PCC, Planned Commercial Center.
And same thing on page 11 for number 5 and 6, right? Redevelopment and parking. Just
Yeah,
change the
that,
name.
correct, as far as the accessory uses, if you're wondering, what is that? That is the, residential houses, residential units above a planned commercial center, planned business center.
Say that one more time.
Residential units on the second floor of a shopping, say a shopping center. The one that has been made use of it is Princess Shopping Center, down there 26 and 32. Actually, it's the only one.
Is that the only one?
Yeah, it's the only one and this code's been in place
More to come, probably.
12, 15 years. We've only had one take advantage of it.
And this has been vetted through Planning Commission over several meetings, so this was before Planning Commission, and they did formally recommend, as per our code, to forward it up to you all. But we just wanted to bring it with this package, because that's what we're doing it for.
Prior to November. I mean, when would this go to the planning commission?
The last several meetings.
June 18th was the last vote they took on.
So, just a question. Where you've stricken all this stuff, Clay?
Yes.
Is it necessary to say refer to, or is it not? If it's already in there,
It-
You need to know where it goes.
I'm gonna play a lawyer in the school play now. Is it necessary to put that in there to say, refer back to, or is, you just strike it? I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't be in there at all on this part, so.
Well, I'm just,
I know,
we're
but-
taking it out.
Yeah, but where would you put it?
Everybody's already spinning around the ceiling because we're taking stuff out, blah, 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 so should we put in there that, it refers to?
So
or-
a
I
special
don't know.
statement that just says for parking or whatever in regard to a planned commercial center, see whatever section of the code.
I'm
We
not
can-
suggesting that we do, I'm just asking if we.
You know, we can
I don't
write it
know.
down, we can.
It's
we
not
can-
that I'm saying we should.
We can see how that'll work out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying we're against it, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
mean it's
Saying
part of
you're
the
against it.
code?
Well, yeah, I guess, I don't know.
But, yeah, we'll see. how it works.
Yeah, if not, don't, it's just a thought.
Anything else?
So to summarize that section, really no changes other than, for the most part,
For the most part, a lot of it was done as clarification, also because of 158. There were some changes that were made that I don't want to lose sight of, eliminating the 25% track coverage.
Yeah, that's
What
the-
was,
yeah.
that was a goal of ours.
Yeah,
The other thing was, we extended the sunset for concept site plan and concept subdivision, because we think that's an advantage for, it works better on the way our review process is for us to monitor it. So there was a couple of,
The golf courses, you added that.
and we added 2 parking, but those were the
right.
Substitute.
the other changes that weren't part of the 158 changes.
Anybody have any questions on that track coverage? Because that's probably the major one. Sure we don't use that.
Just so everybody's clear on what it means, because I may not be.
Sure.
If I have an acre parcel, I can only cover 25% of that acre, as the way it
That's
stands at
pretty
the moment.
close, yeah,
Yeah.
and typically in planned commercial centers, they're roughly, just say about 100 acres. You can only put 25 acres on the building, whatever, on the building. Well, there may be,
Does that include parking or not? Just
doesn't
the
include
building?
parking, but it does not include parking, but it may limit the amount of if somebody wants to do a small expansion, you know, and then we have to monitor it, and it's just, if the site works, then we couldn't come up with a legitimate reason to have that arbitrary number.
Wait, so,
Maybe- I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, maybe clarify, what is the typical lot coverage anyway, given all of the, stormwater
Sure.
management and buffers and all of the landscaping requirements, what do we typically achieve on lot coverage?
That,
Might be helpful for perspective.
let me give you an example of track coverage for Carrolltown Mall. Carrolltown Mall right now is about 24.8% of building coverage.
Okay.
Now, if you look at Carrolltown Mall, it's a lot of parking lot there, so it's coverage probably 90, you know, I don't know the extent, but it's a good bit of coverage there. You know, one of the things that if we do track coverage, one of the things we might get is shared parking. Because if you can increase the size of the building and then maybe use a parking lot that's off-site with an easement, we might be able to get shared parking arrangements, and we might be able to reduce parking. It's interesting how this might, we haven't, we just know that we don't want to give the hard, you have to meet 25% track coverage, and then someone that wants to put a business in there says, well, I can't make it, I need 25.3, whatever. This may give them, the designer, the opportunity to design a project that has more track coverage, but better amenities.
It is
We don't know.
providing the flexibility to the developer to develop the site to the best use that he can, which may be, as Clay said, a little bit more than 25%. In like employment type campuses that exist outside of this county, you're looking at probably 25% coverage. Because they want to have a lot of greenery, but certainly a commercial center is a little bit different in development-wise than an employment campus would be. So we were kind of constraining that development by this percentage.
Would a developer be able to expand their building, their track coverage size if they did parking garage?
But again, track coverage is we haven't seen any parking garages.
But the track coverage is just the
the building.
buildings, so not the parking.
So not the
Yeah,
parking.
no one wants to do a parking garage other than, the only one we have is the hospital.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, if a developer wanted to increase the amount of building they have on their acreage,
Sure.
is if they did a parking garage, would that offset the track coverage requirement?
Well,
No,
and-
they could add up though, as
Yeah.
long as they're under the height requirement.
Well, they can add up on the building.
And by eliminating the track coverage, we don't even have to go to that answer.
I was gonna say, we don't have it anymore.
We don't
We
have
don't
it.
even have to, we don't have to worry about it.
Right.
I just wanted to get clarification on what it meant
Yeah.
versus the.
Yeah, we can just let
versus
them
the
try to
green
figure out the
space
best
and the
way of
parking. That's all.
And maybe that's what we might see, is covered parking.
As I was saying here in downtown Westminster with the courthouse and the state's attorney's office, aren't we projecting to do parking garages and more of them in downtown Westminster?
There is a very rough concept plan for the for expansion of the county, office complex that eventually does call for a parking garage. But that would be just down here, not downtown, really.
I was just wondering how that played into this track coverage
Yeah.
thing.
I'm not gonna track it.
Doesn't,
We're not gonna track it.
we're not gonna track it.
Okay.
It's not there. Stricken. Okay, that's all.
So one of the things we were hoping to do is maybe take motions to, I don't want to say approve, tentatively incorporate this.
Placeholder motions like
Yeah,
we do for
placeholder-
the budget.
Yeah, right, it's a placeholder motion, just so that way we can take this off the table for now. We can always come back to it at some other point in time, but that way we know that everyone is good with this section as written.
Okay, so what kind of motion are you looking for? That we.
We just need a
whenever we
consensus
say
at this
this is
time.
okay.
Yeah, endorse
Sent by the planning commission.
Yeah, endorse chapter 155 as,
And then publish? and then put out for public comment.
It already is out for,
But with,
Right.
so adopt all track changes
yes, we can do
and
that.
republish.
Yes, and we can say, Board of County Commissioners
As proposed.
as proposed, yes, and because the approved, I know, got a little confusing last time, everyone thought it was said
So
and done,
so I'm
but,
wondering why you need that. If it's already proposed, why are we saying we need it to be proposed?
We don't, just,
Isn't that just I mean,
It's-
it's out there, we haven't given you any comments to the contrary, so why not let it ride?
Just, the only point, I guess, is just to clean it up, take out the track changes.
I guess just to know that everyone was good with it.
I
just-
agree, there's no, I don't think
I don't
we
know.
need to keep
Okay.
adding.
Yeah, I mean, we're adding steps here, I mean, we've
Okay.
already, if there's
Yeah.
if it's out there the way that it's written,
Mhm.
then, and we haven't given you anything to change, then let's move on,
Right.
right?
We could just note that it's been reviewed by the.
Yep,
That's-
that's
I
fine,
think
okay,
that's
that's
perfect.
fine, I didn't know how you
Yeah,
wanted to
instead of,
handle it,
because,
okay,
because
yeah.
you get into a whole lot of crazy stuff when, well, you made the motion, well, wait a minute. It was-
Gotcha.
It was just to hold it, well, wait a minute, what does that mean?
No-
We
no
reviewed it,
worries.
we're good, let's move on.
Okay, perfect. So then let's go back to the page that was missing that you all have now, and I truly apologize. And we'll go through now the clarifications 1 through 19 on page 1.
Yes. And most of these were pointed out by citizens at the meetings or by attorneys who wrote into us. I'll start again with number 1, where we added asterisks. It makes very clear then what text is being kept in the code. There was some confusion that if it jumped right from one section to another, we were taking out entire sections of the code. So that's just a clarification that sometimes you see in a text amendment that we made sure that we made.
And the reason we didn't add all the text in is so it didn't look like we had like a 300-page document going on each and every time. So that's why we chose this format for the proposals as opposed to reprinting the entire part of the code.
Because most of the
Okay.
code is not being changed.
Right, that's, I
At this
know, right.
Um,
Okay, you just giving us examples, or you're gonna get down through this whole list?
We'll go through it quickly if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be quick. On page 4, we refined the definition of light manufacturing to add commercial bakery. That was at the request of an attorney. And it fell into what we believed to be the definition of light manufacturing, so that was something that we added. We had a comment in Eldersburg regarding structural steel fabricating, and in our current code, as well as in what would have been the new code, he informed us that that would include welders and anybody that works with steel.
Wasn't that in New Windsor?
The business itself, I think, is in New Windsor, but
Okay.
this gentleman came to the Eldersburg meeting.
Oh, okay.
So we actually created steel mill to differentiate what the intent of the current use is, and we put steel mill only in the I-2. You can see it's on those 3 pages. That we consider a clarification. We added office to the list of I-1 district purpose section, because that is part of the purpose. There had been some missing changes where we changed business park to business/industrial park, so that was cleanup language. You all adopted new language regarding breweries and microbreweries in March, and we made sure we incorporated all those into the existing text, and then took them out where we had to take them out again, but just so it's a clean copy. In the use table, the far right column that references, let's see how it's referred to, additional regulations, where any of the additional regulations were regarding accessory uses, we added that section. That's just for clarity. We had people say, well, for fast food or for drive-throughs, you're not including everything. So again, that was a clarification. This was an actual correction. We changed automobile service center to conditional use in the I-1 district. We realized upon talking about it and getting some comments that that was not our intent. So we changed that back to what it currently is. We clarified the types of dwelling units in both the rural villages and the business park. Before it had just said dwellings. The intent for both of those was specific types of dwellings. For buildings, supplies, sales, and storage, we added the word landscaping because, again, that is the intent of that use. Number 12, we added the separation requirement for airport. That was just inadvertently dropped in the first draft. That's a complete correction. At At the request of a citizen, we added carpentry to the use of welding, sheet metal, machine, and similar shop, to be clear that that did include carpentry.
Yeah, similar shop always included carpentry, but someone
Right.
wanted more clarification to have it spelled out. So we just spelled that out as the similar shop.
In the use table, and this was at the request of several people, we did add business industrial park into the use table to be clear that that would not become a non-conforming use, as well as planned commercial center was put into the use table at the request.
There was some concern that those had been omitted, but they were not. It was just how it was worded. We did not have in the use table, and we just, for having more clarity on what was being allowed, that even though those were always being allowed, making sure that they were in the use table.
Regarding bulk fertilizer sales, we clarified really what that meant, which was not in prepared packing. That was due to some confusion regarding that section. We added bulk requirements for dwellings in the commercial districts, which again have been left out inadvertently. We relocated the sign regulations for planned commercial centers from chapter 155, that's what Clay discussed, so that all the sign regulations are in the same place. We feel that's a more efficient way to do this. And then last, we deleted the requirement for an office to be on-site at a self-service storage facility, and that was due to the way, there's, I believe, several of them that operate in that way where the business is not necessarily on the site.
Just
So-
a question on fertilizer storage and sales on page 51. I think you have a couple places where your zoning is going to change existing places into C1. They're not C2 and C3. Should that be expanded to C1?
That is when, actually, that's in our list of issues to discuss with you. I think that's like number 9. So I
Okay.
think we could come back to that when we discuss that
Sure.
specific issue. The only thing we were clarifying for that highlighted section was what it meant to be bulk, meaning
Mhm.
not in prepared packing. So those are the changes we felt comfortable incorporating into the text that you didn't think you would want to discuss one by one, but we're just bringing them to your attention. And if you do want to discuss them, then we can do that.
When you're referring to dwellings, you're referring to residential?
Yes.
Is that what dwellings?
Yes, and I think before it just said dwelling units, not how our code reads it as single and
Two-family.
two-family dwelling units is currently how.
So it would have included multifamily, and that was not the intent for the rural villages to allow multifamily.
What about dwellings in commercial areas?
That's our
Talk about
first
that?
issue to
Yes.
discuss, of course.
So, okay, so these were the, to make this a little bit in layman's terms, these were the easy ones.
The low-hanging
Yes,
fruit.
yes.
This is
The more
low-hanging
technical,
fruit.
just some
Yes.
kind of easy
Low-hanging fruit.
things.
So now we gear up, and let's get through the ones that are not easy. The ones that require some discussion, right?
Yes, correct. Unless you
many of
feel there's
those-
anything.
No, I mean, I don't see any. Anybody see anything here?
Which on the summary of changes?
Yeah, the ones we just went over. Page 1. And you brought up a question about the fertilizer, but I think we're gonna hit that anyway.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, I was looking here on page 3. Is that?
Oh, are you on the companion document?
Yes.
Yes.
She just went through this.
Yeah, on that I'm fine right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
That was my
yeah,
question.
Okay.
yeah, we're good with this.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just wanna make sure we're fine with that before we get lost in the weeds here.
No, it's easy to do.
Yeah. Weeds is W1 for those in the room. Category.
That was funny.
Yeah, wasn't good, was it?
Now we're ready to go through this?
Trying to lighten
There
it
was
up.
an old one, and it's just been updated.
All right,
Yep, so
so,
All right, where are we heading now?
so where are we going?
You start digging?
Into the issues?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, and just so you know, the companion document is comprehensive, not just from the 21st. So again, just kind of an accounting of all the major changes that have taken place throughout this entire process from the beginning. So we don't need to go through this, we just updated it to reflect the most recent
Okay, that's
changes.
fine.
Yep, just so you know, that's what
All right.
this is.
So where's the planning commission with these issues that we're about to begin to talk about? Have they
We have-
talked about them and punted, or what?
No, because really, this is with you now.
Okay.
These issues reside with the board, we did not take these back
Right.
to the planning commission.
So now they're gonna go back?
No,
They're not?
no, this is with you.
No, okay. I got
Okay.
a lot of questions on this.
Okay.
Yep.
Might take the next hour.
Okay, that's what we have. many hours with you all to go through this as we
All right, you
need.
want them to start on the list first, or do you want to?
You gotta go down.
We have
They
three
might hit what,
documents in
they
front
might
of
hit
Go
what
ahead,
you're
go-
talking
Yep.
about.
Go ahead,
So-
start
And if
on.
not, then you hit that.
Okay.
Okay?
So the document that's most important probably is this. This has the, I believe, 15 most important remaining issues.
Bless you.
Bigger table, shorter arms.
And how this is laid out is it has the topic, the background of how the issue arose, what the issue is, and then suggested options for resolution. And if there may even be additional options that you all may want to consider, but these were the ones that we thought of first off. So not to limit you just to those three, just to give you some initial choices to choose from.
You've got, let's see.
And then this goes with, obviously, the 158 itself. So you can see within context as well.
Last thing in the packet we got
So if we
today.
want to, Linda.
I keep adding it in
Yes,
the packet, and
correct.
I'm repeating
I
it.
know.
So
My-
this
my packet's-
refers to this,
My packet's
which
in
is the
my,
158.
it's over there somewhere, so we're gonna share it.
Do you need,
All right.
would you like to scoot actually? Yeah, we have the extra
Is
copies
there? Okay.
of this.
Page 51.
Oh, I didn't. Okay. All right, well, why don't we go down through the list that you have, and then Dick, if they hit yours, that's fine. If not, then we'll get to yours at the end, okay?
Gonna hit them somewhere.
Yeah, we'll probably hit them somewhere.
Somewhere.
Thank you.
I think
Okay,
everyone should
good.
have. a
Yes, sir.
little-
All right.
Yep.
Good place to start.
Okay. The first issue is allowing dwellings in the commercial districts. And you'll recall, we had a discussion about this several months ago, but currently dwellings, which is homes, are allowed in the BNR and BG zoning districts as a pass-through use from the residential districts. And that's been in the code since the very beginning. One of the concepts that we adopted early on was not having automatic pass-throughs anymore and looking at each zone for what the highest and best use and the purpose of the zone is. So when that occurred, we proposed, and in February, you agreed that, with the exception of the rural villages, where you often see dwellings integrated into the area, that dwellings should no longer be allowed by right in the commercial districts. So, with this, and that is outside the rural villages, planned commercial centers on the second floor, as we talked about, and business parks. So certain homes will become non-conforming uses. And we did hear a lot from people at the public meetings. There was a little confusion because a lot of the people we've heard from were in the rural villages, and they will not be non-conforming.
That's correct, yes.
But-
I've got one of those issues right now. I'm trying to explain to the folks that that's not the case. but-
Right, the way the use table reads, if you're in the rural village, you are still permitted. However, we are still probably about 50 homes
50, we did a-
countywide that would become non-conforming. That's what our best estimate is about,
That's it?
Yep.
So there are 50 homes
Outside
in a
the rural
commercial
village.
district right
There's
now.
got.
outside the rural villages.
Outside of
villages.
rural villages.
There has to be more than 50.
No, we've done it two different ways.
You're
It's,
talking about residents that are on commercial property, C1, C2 property, co-located with a commercial property. You're saying there's only 50?
Okay, so here's what, so co-located might be a little bit different. We used SDAT information to see how they were assessed. So, if they have a business running out of their home, I mean, that's different. And you
No,
can have,
I'm not talking, I apologize.
No.
I'm talking about an established commercial, in Eldersburg, the funeral home, Sunbrook, that home above the funeral home. You're saying there's only 50?
well, not like that. We're talking about 50 plain houses residentially assessed. Zumbrum would be commercially assessed.
Is this addressing that?
So
or not?
we will get to that. That is part of this discussion.
So what is this address?
This is just addressing pure-
single-family homes in
Correct.
commercial?
1 and 2 family dwellings in the commercial.
Like on 26 across from St. John property, there's a house, and that's commercially zoned. That's what you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
yes, just a pure house.
And there's only 50?
Now,
Yeah,
remember
based
now,
on
we're
our-
not talking
our-
about the municipalities, right?
And we're not, right.
Yeah.
We're rural
So
villages.
cross those out
Yeah.
and cross
Okay.
out your rural
And
villages.
cross out rural villages.
And now you're down to about 50. Makes sense.
Wow.
and cross
Okay.
out industrial. We
First of
found
all, I'm
a
not
lot
sure
in the
who would want it.
industrial,
Yeah,
but
there's
they're
about
not
tw-
actually
yeah,
permitted.
20, there's about 19 or 20 in the industrial.
Well,
that
it
we
wasn't
did.
industrial
business, right?
early on,
That's not
or
the
it wasn't
same.
commercial
That's-
early on.
That's not.
Or they build a business around their home.
That's not what we're talking about, though.
No, we're not talking
We're
about
not talking
that.
about that.
We're just talking
These are-
pure house.
These are single-family dwellings
Yeah.
in a commercial
In a
zone.
commercial
And there are, so I will give you an
Period.
example on
Not- we're not
26,
getting into
which
the-
is
Who has a business
Yeah.
in the
very
basement.
interesting.
Right.
Right. For instance, on 26, just west of Salerno's, fairly new homes, probably within the last 20 years. 3 of them built together. They have the Leland cypress kind of buffering them from all the commercial surrounding. Those are actually B&R. And they were built in
They're
B&R.
commercial. They're commercial
And they're
zones.
commercial zone, but they are pure residents with garages, single family. Those are gonna become non-conforming.
As it stands.
As it
As it
stands,
is-
correct,
as
as
it
it
is right
stands,
now.
yes, correct. But that's the example of what we were looking at, that type of pure just house.
Nothing happens
at
to the
all.
people.
No.
Okay, they're safe.
They're just non-conforming.
Well, no, unless they want to sell, and if they
Well-
cannot sell within a year, they can get the exception for an additional year. But if they cannot do it within then, it reverts to not just non-conforming, but,
And there may be reasons they want
It's-
to be,
it's commercial.
they never
No,
asked for
it's
land
actually-
use.
Right.
yeah.
If they want to sell.
Yeah.
And they're not living in the house, then it's a year. If they're living in the house and they want to sell, it doesn't make any difference how long it takes to
So
sell the
let's
house.
say they want to get out of the house.
Well,
and
that's
sell.
different.
Right.
That's
Right.
a different.
There,
yeah.
that's a
Right.
big distinction now.
But I mean,
If I want to
no,
sell my
I
house, I'm
understand.
living in my
I-
house.
I agree.
And it takes me 6 years to sell it because it's such a great house. But for whatever reason, it makes no difference. If I leave my house and I want to sell it and it's not
You have the
conforming,
1
that's
year.
the 1 year.
Yeah, that's where you get, that's where the flag goes up.
And it travels with the property, not the owner, so they could even rent it out for someone to live
No,
there.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand where we're going. It's-
So if they rented it and they weren't there, then it's still
Correct.
non-conforming
Residential.
use
Correct.
and
Use for
then sell it to
residential.
somebody else, right?
Because
Yeah.
you have a question that a lot of people had. Well, what happens? Well, nothing.
Nothing.
Right, because
Nothing.
I was wondering if we'll have constituents yelling at us.
What about when they sell the house to
Always
the new
will,
owners?
yes.
Yep, it travels with the
It
property,
travels with the property,
not the person.
not the person.
Well, with full information though, if they want to expand or alter it, then they have to
They
come
would
to.
put an addition
these.
on, or add a
Or
garage.
put a pool in.
Or something. Then they would have to go through a hearing through my office for an expansion of a non-conforming use.
Right.
So that would be the only
Right.
thing that would happen
Right.
to something in a non-conforming house.
So,
What about if you amend the new code to allow dwellings by right in C1 and 2? What does that,
You can do that, and those are some of the options.
so you did the
So,
3 options.
for right now, we just laid out 3 options, there could be other, changes that you may want to see. But the first one is no change to the proposed code, existing dwellings will become non-conforming, so that's what we're talking about now. Allowing single dwellings on a commercially zoned property when associated with a commercial use. Or amend the proposed new code to allow dwellings by right in C1 and C2. The one with the allow a single dwelling on a commercially zoned property when associated with the commercial use, this would go to the Zumbrum, this would go to the church on 140 that has a parsonage on the property. So that would be covering those types of
How
issues.
many of the 50 does that cover?
Those were different, we did
Different.
not include those
It's
in
a
our
whole
count.
lot
The
more.
50, right, correct. The 50 is the pure
Oh,
of what
okay.
Because
is.
we didn't really have a way to identify those
Yeah.
unless they contacted us.
Right, that was really
So-
hard.
so yeah, right now, we're talking about residential homes that are already there in commercial zoned areas.
Correct.
And you're saying there's 50 of them
That we could come up with, yes.
that you can come up with. The option of keeping them and like grandfathered, and they are conformed in that commercial area, those 50, but new construction is not allowed. New residential construction in commercial zoned area is not allowed.
Well, that is an option.
It's an option that you
Yeah,
don't see
you
here.
don't see.
And we discussed it, I
Okay.
don't know if you want to talk to that, there was a
Well,
bit of
like
an
I say,
enforcement problem.
If we keep where we don't allow any dwellings in the commercial zoning district, then you would not be able to build a dwelling on an empty commercial lot. You just would not be allowed to do it. It's not allowed. However, if, like I say, if they had a dwelling there, it would continue to be used, become non-conforming, but they could continue to use it if it's already there.
Why not just grandfather them and say they're conforming? And then we're dealing with 50, then it was, part of the vision of our county is quality of life, and peace of mind is part of that quality of life. And if we're talking 50 homes out of
Just,
thousands out, I mean, we're not changing anything, but what I don't want to do is allow for new growth of residential homes in commercial zoned areas, because that's why we're doing what we're doing. But
Say that again?
I don't want to allow new residential homes be built in commercially zoned areas,
Okay,
Because it waters down the
because that's
Right.
not why
well,
it's
right.
commercial, right?
And I don't know
But-
who in the world would want to do that.
Well,
Well, you might have a funeral home wants to start up
That's not-
somewhere.
Yeah.
but that's not
that-
what we're talking
That's not
about.
what,
We're talking about is
Well, that would
single-family
be
home.
commercial.
No, we're not talking about the Zimmerman, but we're talking about just single-family homes.
Okay, but they
Just-
want to live right there on the site and build a home.
That's the number.
I don't know why they would,
That's the
but,
number 2 choice.
Yeah, that's associated with the commercial
if it's
use.
associated with the use, but I still.
yeah.
one thing you need to, it's, when you're talking non-conforming uses, like if there, we identified approximately 50 in the commercial zoning districts.
Right.
But there are also a lot of other non-conforming residential units, dwellings in the county that due to either lot size or setbacks or something
Right.
else that are non-conforming,
Right.
that would have to go through that same process of public hearing to expand or do something different on the property. So, like I say, being non-conforming just doesn't affect those 50 houses. There's
Right.
a whole lot of houses out there that are residential units that are actually non-conforming.
And what's the definition of associated with commercial use mean? My second cousin, because I own the commercial use, is
That
that
would-
associated? They're related to me.
I would not say that would be associated with a business use.
Well, but
If you
then-
had a dwelling on a property.
Now I'm gonna get an attorney.
We don't need an attorney.
You have more
No, I'm
cards
just
flying
giving
out your
you
I
an example.
understand.
Where does that stop? That's the problem I'm having with it.
Right.
I'm agreeing with Ed.
Yeah.
Right.
I just don't think that there's any room, there's any place for that. Well, who in the world would wanna do that?
The only thing that I could think of, that if someone wanted to build a house on a property that's commercial, that has a commercial business on it, is if it was for some type of security. If you had someone living on the property, if you had very valuable equipment that you stored outside that you wanted somebody to keep an eye on and live on the property to watch it,
Cannabis.
I could see that. But just to have a house on there just for somebody to live in
Right.
with a
Funeral-
business that's your
funeral
second cousin,
establishments.
no. That would not be
They're
done.
traditional.
But you never
churches
know
and
in these
funeral homes.
situations what's going to pop up. Somebody
Yeah.
does have want a security house on it, or somebody to live there.
To which
or
I
a-
say, if we're gonna write the code based on every cotton picking
Yep.
example,
Correct.
2030, we might be done.
You don't know what's going to happen, though.
Dick,
You're
I'm just
getting
saying,
very
you
restrictive.
can't- That's, I can't, I can't agree. I can't agree that saying you can't build a new home in commercial property is restrictive. I think that's just common sense.
Say that one more time.
I don't agree that being restrictive is not allowing new dwelling on a commercial property. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's restrictive at all. I think that's common sense. But maybe I'm looking at it wrong.
New dwelling.
New dwelling,
Not associated with anything.
correct.
Right, but what about a new dwelling associated and
New
just
dwelling
further-
associated with a business, I can see
Yeah,
that.
right, same here.
I mean, I wouldn't wanna do it, but
Yeah, but.
Somebody would.
I guess
Yeah.
there's somebody out there.
and-
I
and
could
that's
go
it.
that far.
Yeah, I
but-
agree. And
But then
further-
I would
yeah.
say to you, you need to identify what associated
I
with
agree.
business means.
I agree,
Because I'm telling you,
yeah.
here we go.
Further define associated.
That would probably lead to an interpretation on my part of, is it associated with that business?
Right.
So that's what I would have to decide.
Which is a good start, and then it's just an agreement on us on what the term associated is, and we define it.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate. Yeah, I do not believe we should be allowing new dwellings on commercially zoned areas. I do believe we should allow those that are on those commercially zoned areas, especially if it's only 50, to identify them as conform to the zoning as is. And then allow for new dwellings to be allowed to be built only when appropriately associated with the commercial use, like a church or a funeral, home, whatever it could be. It could be security for.
Yeah, I agree with
for
That
sale.
makes sense.
I agree with that.
Okay.
We just
I think
change
that's a
the
good way to do it. But then what do
Basically,
you
then
do?
what you would be saying then is
Would
if
you
the
be
house
able
is
to
existing
present it?
at the time of the adoption of the ordinance,
Right.
then it would not be considered non-conforming.
It would be,
A permitted use.
it would be a
Yeah,
permitted
permitted
You're
use.
use.
saying amend
If-
use table to say a home in existence as of
Right.
As of,
2019.
yes,
is a
would be
permitted use.
a permitted use. That way you couldn't build
Right,
after
if
that
there's only
date.
50, they're permitted.
Right.
We're
Correct.
just gonna say they're permitted. And then in the future, if somebody wants to build a new house, it has got to be,
Associated
and
with.
I like the word appropriately maybe added to that, because again, I'm telling you right now,
It has to be defined.
what is associated
Right.
with the business?
Right.
What does that mean to you?
I agree. I mean,
My
again.
third cousin
yeah.
opens the door for
Yeah.
my employees to come in.
Yeah.
They're associated.
You know, we've gotta maintain the vision of the county, and that's.
If that's why there's no reason to be there, so be it.
And they move.
Get a new person.
Yeah, okay.
Get another
You
cousin.
can't buy the house unless you open the door in the morning.
That's right.
Unless you open the door in the morning.
Well, just one thing, you wouldn't be able to sell that house unless you sold the business too, because they'd be on the same property.
Oh, okay, so
So the house
You can't
would not be able,
subdivide.
I couldn't sell it to you, for you to move into the house,
because it's not right.
Well,
part of that, I'd have to sell my business with it. You'd have to be buying the whole bundle.
But if it's accessories, it was-
Unless you subdivide, yeah.
So what does that do to the way that the code is? Would that be all right?
Yeah, that's fine, we're just trying to make sure the wording was.
Okay.
Yeah, subdivide.
So it's your,
Sell the house.
you guys agree? I'm
Yeah.
not having Eric, but do you agree with that?
yeah.
To
And-
allow
yeah.
those that are there, if there's only 50-ish, allow those to be permitted
Yep.
use? Not, don't call them non-conforming,
Yeah.
call them
Right.
permitted.
Right.
And then also say that the dwelling, as long as it's however associated with the business, it could be built there as
Okay.
well.
And then you just owe us
I would say they'd
to
have
come
to meet
back,
all the
what
requirements.
is defined as appropriately associated.
Okay.
Okay.
That's.
Yeah, there has to be
important.
some direct connection
Right.
with the business.
Right.
Maybe that's the thing,
And-
direct
and-
connection, maybe instead of associated, I don't know.
Maybe non-conforming.
Yeah, we did talk about that word a lot,
Yeah.
and there was, basically, we fell on it with Jay's interpretation, but if you want us to lock it down. some more.
Well, I mean, I know what directly connected means. I don't necessarily know what associated means.
That's your definition.
Yeah, just take, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, just take a look at the words
And
and come
define
up with
it.
the best, come back to us.
So to recap, since you're back in, Eric, what we're saying is the 50-ish that are identified as
Non-conforming.
being there, we're gonna call them permitted to be there
Okay,
when this is adopted.
thank you very much.
And then go with if they're somehow connected to the business, they're allowed to be.
And that could, like I say, if you have a church as an accessory use, you can have a parsonage, which is a
Right.
dwelling.
Yeah.
But that's an accessory use to the church, which is part of the business.
I just think directly
So it'd be
connected or
similar to
something
that.
along those lines
Yeah.
hones it in better than associated. That's just my personal opinion.
Got one down.
One day.
Yep. Is
Well,
everyone good
that's a
with?
big one.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
great. No, we appreciate this.
It is.
And number two, we've actually received a lot of comments on as well.
At that hearing.
Self-storage facilities are permitted by right in the BG district currently, and we did talk a lot about this, and I gave you back in February an inventory of all the ones we have. Basically, 4 facilities currently in the BG district and one that has an approved site plan would be affected by this and would become non-conforming. The updated code proposes this use be permitted by right in the C3, but a conditional use in the C2. The request has been made by several of these businesses to either be put in the C3 or for this to continue to be a permitted use so that they don't have non-conforming status.
Do you mean put in a C2?
C2.
Put in a C2,
Yes, that
To
was,
be inclusive to
Not
C2.
not 3, 2. C2.
No,
Yeah.
she's saying
Currently
that the
prohibited.
businesses themselves be made C3,
Oh,
It's permitted.
right? Is that
That's
you
what
meant?
I was saying was
Yeah.
requested.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
group, we would prefer that you look at amending the text
For
to
C2.
keep allowing it in the C2 by right, not by conditional use. So these
Correct.
businesses do not become non-conforming,
Right.
but a
Right.
lot of them are not appropriate for a C3 property designation. So we kind of rejected that idea.
Why aren't they appropriate for
They're-
C3?
A lot of them aren't big enough, they don't meet some of the criteria that the C3.
Where their
district-
location on major roads. The C3 is really trying to be reserved for the largest types of commercial, more intense commercial, almost spanning in some ways into the industrial.
And if we put this in C2, it makes no difference.
no, I don't know what.
Right, they continue to be
Right, and
permitted
they'll be
use
permitted in
with all the
C2,
regulations
and
that
they're
are currently
C2
in
now,
place.
so
And
it
I
makes no
think-
difference why they can't be in C2.
I think you take away that poking of the beehive if you
Mhm.
remove the word non-conforming.
Right, agreed.
And they still have all the regulations in the code on them that are under them as a permitted use today, so.
I say number 2.
Yeah, so let's go to number 2.
You guys good with that?
Oh, you're
Yeah.
right.
So you're saying not allowing them in C3, only in C2? Or- Say
We
it one
were
more time.
proposing to change C3.
The ones that are
The one-
non-conforming are in C2 right now. So change C2 to make it a conform, to make it
Right.
allowable use.
Right, so still allow it to be in C3, but instead of moving the request from some of the properties, from a mapping perspective, was to map them from C2 and map them into C3, as opposed to altering the text. The staff suggestion is alter the text to just make it a permitted by right in the C2, because those particular parcels,
In addition to C3?
in
Yes.
addition to
Correct.
C3.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
okay.
Yeah, don't eliminate it.
Yeah,
If
don't
they're big
eliminate
enough
it. No, 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 I'm
and they meet the
sorry.
requirements, good, go
I'm
to
good.
3.
I'm good.
But just get rid of the word non-conforming,
Correct.
so now you're happy in
Right.
C2.
Right, correct, or you have to get a conditional use or anything
Right.
like that. No additional regulations or
Right.
any steps, we're not having to go through that.
So number
Okay,
two.
everybody good with that?
Yes, sir.
Number 3.
Okay, training facilities, the new code is proposing training or professional training centers are currently permitted use in the IR district. The new code was proposing that this only be when they're part of an approved industrial park. It came to our attention that the Arc of Carroll County, which is in the IR district, is not technically in an approved industrial park. And the request has been made that we just allow this by right in the new I-1 district, rather than requiring it to be part of an industrial park. And the staff, in talking, would agree that this is an appropriate use for the IR regardless, I'm sorry, the I-1, regardless of whether it's.
Allowing the Arc Carroll to be conforming in the I-1.
Right.
And
Or
any
any
other
And any other
professional
professional
training
training
center. Not just
facility.
Yep, let's go to
Again.
number 2.
Again, isn't it amazing how common sense makes some of these decisions? 4.
Okay, the commissioners who were here several years ago may remember that there was a zoning text amendment in 2016 to make petroleum product storage a specific principal use. Prior to that, it was only an accessory use. The reasons for doing this had more to do with the ag district than anything, but at the time that this text amendment went through, it only added this use as a principal use in the IR and IG. The BG wasn't even considered, and it has come to our attention that there are several of these uses currently in the BG district, soon to become the C2 district. They would not be, oh, they are currently non-conforming, okay. But the property owners don't want to continue with that status. I'm only pointing out that this code is not making their situation worse, but you may want to take this opportunity to discuss making their situation
So,
better.
so give us an example.
So an example is Old Westminster Pike, at the corner of 97-ish and Old Westminster Pike.
I guess the best example
Yeah.
is probably Fleming Wall down on 26,
Okay.
just south of 32. They've been there forever, and they've been certified as non-conforming.
Just on
And
32,
they've
south of
they've replaced the
26.
tanks
Yeah.
already down there, but
Aren't they that?
they're currently still non-conforming because they're in that business zoning. By allowing them, they become conforming.
So we'd be allowing them to be
They're on 32,
C2.
yes.
To allow
Right.
them permitted in C2.
They are going to be in C2.
Mhm.
That's the plan, that's what the map shows.
Well, they're in
What-
C2 right now.
That's correct. Well, they're in
Right.
BG,
They're in
but
G.
they're going to be
They're in
C2.
BG.
C2, C2, yes.
Right, and then, so this would allow them to be a conforming use in the C2.
In C2.
because-
or in C-
Exactly.
Okay.
Correct.
That's what the proposal is here. And again, I don't think it's necessarily at their request, but this is an opportunity, I think.
Correct.
That we could make this change that makes them conformable.
And again, not to make, the reason they're not being made C3 is again, what roads are located. Some of these parcels are very small. So that's why they were put into the C2.
This is only up to 2,000 gallons of storage, though.
Yeah, we did not change that petroleum storage
No, this is when
portion.
it's more than 2,000.
More.
If it's
This
less than
exceeds.
2,000, it's an accessory
Mhm.
use.
Yes.
We did not change any of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the way it's always been, right?
The board changed it about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it was, I think.
What was the onus?
We had
behind-
a-
What was the onus behind the number? What was the, what was the, why 2,000?
It's been that way in the code.
We
The
had a,
change was to allow,
Because it was, it's,
more storage.
we had an ag,
Was an ag.
conditional use to that up to 20,000 gallons, I think. And this was more for dryer systems on farm, drying and those type things. That they could have, what was it, 20 or 30, up to 30,000
Well,
gallons.
it's up to 50,000 gallons.
Uh,
No
of-
one tank greater than 30,000
Yeah.
That's
On,
what they can do now.
is what they can do now.
Mhm.
And like I said, it was initially directed to farms.
Yeah, it's basically for
that wanted to
agricultural
store
use. Yeah.
for, fuel for their dryers and heating and stuff on their property, more than the 2,000 gallons.
Yeah.
But that's not what this is talking about.
Yes.
No.
2,000 gallon
Or
limit.
above.
2,000 and above.
2,000 above.
2,000 and above to go into C2.
Correct. As a
As a condition.
regular
As a
use,
condition.
as a principal use.
No.
No, as a condition.
As a
Conditional, I'm
condition.
sorry, yes, conditional. Because everybody's allowed 2,000 gallons and under.
Got it.
I mean,
Right.
every property in the county could have
Got it.
2,000
Right.
gallons. But to have more than that, it would be a conditional use in the C2.
So for these folks like
It's a
the,
2,000 gallon tank, dude. What is the standard 2,000 gallon tank? Like an oil tank?
Little bigger.
You mean which type of oil tank? Fuel?
Yeah, fuel tank.
They're usually 500
Or 500.
for home use.
yeah.
This one uses 500.
Stables here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what they're really asking here, there's no change made. They were non-conforming use in the old code, they're non-conforming use in the new code. What they really want to be is a conditional,
Right, so they'd have to come in for their conditional
Right.
use approval.
So they just wanted to kind of clean up the whole
Yes.
code for their own purposes.
Did we get it?
We haven't made them any worse.
Right.
than
No.
The new code is.
Did we have any specific requests for this?
No, it just came to our attention, like, what is happening, why are we doing this, what can
Okay.
be done? And so this was one of the options that we said we would bring forward.
Are we creating any hardships by doing this for anybody?
I think we're
Not that I
improving.
can think
It
of.
makes it better.
I think it makes it better.
It gives them the
myself.
option
Yeah.
of getting a conditional use. Currently, they just have to be non-conforming as a
Exactly.
prohibited.
Mhm.
And right now, like Fleming is non-conforming.
Correct.
Correct.
because
They have always
prohibited
been.
use.
But they have always
Yes.
been
Right.
non-conforming.
So making it conditional just makes more sense. The whole idea is to lessen the non-conforming, around the
Right.
county, so.
Option 2.
I think two's good there.
Definitely
Everybody good
taking
with
care of
that?
my lines
Yes,
closed.
sir.
I got some room in Fleming.
As long as
Okay,
you
we're
get
only
rid of
on
that
page
word
2.
non-conforming, I don't know why anybody
It's
would
on
bark.
page 2, 3.
Non-conforming seems to be the nasty word.
Yeah, it's place. It's needed.
Well, I know that, but, yeah, but in this case, I don't even, okay. All right, sorry, we're talking amongst ourselves. 5?
Let's move on.
Number 5.
Okay, contractors' equipment storage is currently permitted as a conditional use in the ag district, and it's a pass-through use to the BNR and BG district. Similar to what we talked about dwellings, the recommendation was originally that the code prohibits this use in the new commercial districts. The thought being it's not the best use in the commercial districts. It would remain a conditional use in both industrial districts, and obviously we haven't touched the ag district, so it would still be allowed there. But with this prohibition, some previously approved conditional uses will become non-conforming. We've identified 12 that have been received conditional use approval in the business districts over the past 40 years. We're not sure if they're all still in existence. That was just a matter of going through the old conditional use files. So there are 12 potential out there that would be affected. We've heard from one or two, maybe just one, of these, and we needed to bring it to your attention as a
Does
citizen.
this include like landscaping?
That is.
Or is that what this is, contractual?
Contractual.
You know,
At
we
the
had
bottom,
a-
yeah.
a landscaping yard and a fenced-in area with a handful
Equipment
of
and
large
the
equipment.
Well,
materials.
that's accessory too,
Well,
so
it's-
this is
right,
a
you
little
have to
bit
be careful.
different.
It's not accessory to a
Right.
business. This is a separate use.
Yes, and you
It
give
is,
me
it
an
is
example.
defined in the code.
Yep.
Yeah.
As a-
It is
lets you know
defined
what-
as the use of any space, and this is a principal use, the use of any space, whether inside or outside a building, for the storage or keeping of contractors' equipment or machinery, including building materials storage, construction equipment storage, or landscaping equipment and associated materials.
But not like if you have a landscaping company and you store your stuff there, that is not the contractor's
Or
equipment.
if you're a plumber
Yeah.
and you've got your things on site.
And most of the pure ones that are just these contractor equipment storage yards happen in the ag zone.
So
Yes, when we
you-
went through the files, most of them are in the ag zone, and there's a bunch in the.
Unfortunately, I'm still confused on this.
Well,
If
right
it
now,
doesn't
yeah.
include that, what is this then?
Just purely storing equipment.
That's
Not
if you're a
associated.
contractor, I think, I would say CJ Miller Yard or
Uh-huh.
towards Hampstead.
Okay.
Contractors equipment storage, it's where they park and store all their
Yeah.
equipment.
Yeah,
They do some work on some of the trucks there.
So what's wrong with putting that in commercial?
yeah.
Well, I think the committee felt that it just wasn't
Highest and best use.
the highest or best or a good use for that commercial property.
And it is still permitted in the ag as well as the
Mhm.
industrial by conditional use.
So we need no change?
Just wanted to
Well,
bring it to your
yeah,
attention.
since we had so many questions and comments about this.
I don't really know why it would be, I mean, I don't wanna, I'd like to hear why the work group thought it would be a problem in commercial districts.
Yeah.
Isn't that where you have that stuff anyway?
Well, no, that's what we're saying. Most of it has been in the ag zone, in our
Yeah,
in
but
industrial.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But if you've got a commercial district somewhere and you wanna have 4 landscaping trucks, what's the problem with that?
Well, we have very little commercially zoned land in the county in general. And so we wanted to, the thought was to reserve that commercially zoned land for commercial activities.
And
of
employment generators,
gener-
which
thank
this
you.
is not an employment
This is
generator.
simply a storage of these areas, and this equipment that is done, we have a lot of other land within the county where this is allowed.
Well, then we could do the same thing that we did with the first thing that we looked at. The 12 that are in there right now, allow them because they're already there, but then don't allow any additional one in commercial use.
So if they currently have a conditional use in the commercial districts for this use, is what you're saying? They have to have the conditional use.
Currently.
Currently, if they have it.
They have to be allowed
Then
currently.
they're okay, we'll allow, that's
Well, what's-
whatever the next use is. But then, don't allow any more in the commercial districts because the best use for commercial districts is for employment.
For employment?
Any job.
These all have jobs associated with them, probably 25, 30 jobs,
But
many of them.
Well, through their offices, this is not associated with an office or a construction company, just simply a fenced-in area where they just store this
Right.
equipment, and it's not really on-site. Like, for instance, I do think that CJ Miller property is a good one outside of Hampstead, that they just have their equipment there. It's a fenced-in yard, they pull their trucks in or whatever they store there.
I'm gonna disagree on this one.
Okay.
I don't see why this is a big deal in a commercial district.
That's what number 2 is about.
Generate or not generate business or
Okay.
jobs, it seems like the appropriate place to me to put that. Now, if I'm in a residential area and I got a landscaper living beside me with 6 trailers and 82 people coming to work, dude's gonna bark. But in a commercial district,
And a person's gonna wanna be in close proximity to where he or she can get their equipment. And so, yeah.
I mean, I understand
I
your-
think it would be conforming in commercial as well.
Well, that's why we have a lot in the ag zone.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why they go to the ag zone, because a lot of them want to be where they live.
Right.
And the
So-
ag zone allows it.
And
Commercial
also
zones
they
do
have
not, correct,
larger
Jay?
lots and bigger.
Oh, it's a pass-through, if I remember.
It
Yeah.
is passed.
Yes.
It's past.
Currently, it's a
But we don't have
pass-through.
much in the residential.
I just don't,
because-
I mean, I see your reasoning a little bit about the generation of employment and that type of thing, but good grief, what better place to put these than industrial or commercial?
Right.
So we stick
That's
with
what I
one.
think.
Okay.
So maybe conditional use in commercial and industrial. That's kind of what we're saying, right?
Yeah, I think option 2 here's the one that I.
For all 3 commercial, just so I know.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I get what you guys are thinking, but.
So number
I
2
just
allows
think
it by
this is a
right.
better-
Yes, it allows it by
Conditional.
right. Do you want to
Do
make
you
it
want it to be
conditional?
conditional, or do you
Oh,
want
it's
it-
currently conditional.
But this,
Yeah.
is this amending it to be by right?
Yeah,
then,
this
number
would be
2?
to
Right.
allow it.
Yeah.
It'd be a conditional, allowed
Allow
use.
pri-
Being allowed use in a commercial district.
Well, it says
Yeah.
option 2.
Or should we just make it conditional?
I mean, you could
See,
make
the-
it.
the-
Well, it's
might-
currently conditional now.
I
might-
apologize. The conditional in the C1 areas, but C2, C3, they're big enough, and you would expect it, but something in C1, and I'm visualizing, this, that should be conditional, and you have to ask for it, but, I
Well, it's a
mean,
conditional use now,
It's
right?
only a conditional.
It's only conditional.
Everywhere, in every
Everywhere.
zone.
Including the industrial, including the ag.
right, but allowing it not to necessarily, but principal use in C2, C3, and I1, 2, but the very small commercial areas, making that conditional. So, 'cause I can see where in the smaller commercial areas, closer to residential areas, there could be that,
Yeah, I can see that
friction,
too.
but-
Yeah, that, you paint that
Yeah.
picture, now I can see that a little bit.
so,
Does it keep it consistent, though, if it's a conditional use everywhere? Just keeps it simple.
yeah, but we're still trying to protect, and again, like you've taught us very well, what is the best use of that property, And, we don't want to just be,
So you're suggesting, Ed, to make it conditional use in C1? And
Correct.
permitted in C2, 3, I1, 2?
yep, correct. That's correct.
I would say almost the C1 though, in some ways, because we have a lot of those, community crossroad commercial areas. Some are in rural villages, but some aren't. That, actually, those are less in the center of neighborhoods, and we're more in our rural areas.
Right,
So just locationally, it may be,
but that's why you're making it conditional where.
or are you
judgment
making it conditional or permitted everywhere?
Permitted in C2,
Okay.
C3, I1, I2,
But you're gonna-
conditional in C1.
okay.
Correct.
That makes sense.
I think that might be the way to go. I don't know. Could we get more, can we come back with a little bit more info on what these 12 are that we've identified?
Where they are.
We can send you that.
Yeah,
What
we
they
can
are?
cut,
I
we
mean,
can.
we're gonna meet again on Thursday.
Yes,
We've got it.
yes.
That would be good.
Why don't you just give us a list of what they are before we,
Yeah.
that's our suggested use right now, I think.
Yeah.
Is everybody else thinking that same way?
I
Right?
think it's a good idea.
Okay.
But then, let's hone in on it a little bit, maybe with examples.
Okay, very
Okay.
good. We'll do that.
More discussion.
Right, from that
From that.
economic development perspective,
yes.
again,
Yep, I don't wanna
I
cross you guys.
certainly agree with Commissioner Rothstein.
I
The
appreciate
C1 district, that, you are getting into an area that type of use could certainly be in conflict.
And cause friction, sure.
Right, and then, to be selfish about our I districts in terms of generating that employment. I understand, a truck is associated with a driver, but that's also associated with their headquarters, not just a parking lot, which is taking up an acre that has water and sewer and the things we need as a higher and best use. So that would be our
It's valid.
department's perspective.
That's a valid point, yeah. But this sort of reaches that compromise, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Right.
Conditional, I think
No.
is what I heard.
No, I apologize. You're saying conditional also in I1, I2, the way you just described it. And
But we couldn't stop, the
Conditional
county
use.
couldn't stop a conditional use based on we'd rather have something better.
Right.
Correct. That's why I'm saying permitted in C2, C3, I1, I2, conditional in C1. And I, like Commissioner Frazier shared, those 12 that are already in place, we should take a good look at allowing them to be conformed, just like we did with the
C1 in the raw building.
earlier discussion, so. But if you can come back to us, that'd be great.
I would like to think that those in the I-1, I-2 would have enough sense to know that that's not the best use of their property.
Correct, and, you know, the business decision is
Man, I'm
incumbent.
really
Do you want to
trying
pay the price?
Yeah, I apologize. I'm trying to insert common sense in a lot of this discussion, and I know that that's lacking
Yeah.
these days. I understand that. I get it. But I would like to think that if you're a good investor and you've got a good piece of I-1 property,
Mhm.
Yeah.
That you
probably
would
not gonna
it
put
there.
14 trucks sitting there that don't do anything but get a driver in them every day and they leave.
Mhm. True, and that's a business case, certainly. It's not an industrial park.
Right. So let's do that. Let's see what give us the 12 so that we can get a little bit more of an idea of what they are. And tentatively, we're looking at conditional in one and permitted in the rest.
Gonna lose them all, all right.
All right.
Vehicle repair.
Number 7 is vehicle repair, which is currently permitted in the BG as a permitted use. It's proposed to be conditional. What's wrong? It's proposed to be conditional in the C2, but remain permitted in the C3. These vehicle repair shops in the C2 would become non-conforming if they don't come in and get a conditional use. 5 vehicle repair shops have been identified in the new C2 and 1 in the C1 where it would be prohibited. As a team, we talked about this, and of these 2 options, we do feel this would be an appropriate use, that this would, you might want to consider the change to the proposal, which would amend it and allow this use at least in the C2 district and possibly in the C1 district.
Conditional in C2 is what you're.
Well,
No, they're
Permitted.
currently proposed to be
That's
conditional, and that makes them non-conforming if they don't come in and get it. So we're proposing that it is an appropriate use, permitted.
Currently,
in the
there's
C2.
one
Permitted
in-
use in C2 right now, I mean, not supposed
That's
to be, right.
Right.
But the one that's in C1, again, should be allowed as a permitted use, because they're already there. Would be my suggestion. You said there's one in C1 right now, right?
There is one that we've identified.
Okay, then
We've
if
definitely
they're
heard from
already
at
there-
least 3 of these. I'm sorry.
By chance, is it in Limeboro?
No, because that's on ag land.
No, that is,
That's on ag land.
Okay.
That's
that is
totally
the only
different.
ag, repair shop in the county.
Okay.
It's on ag areas, and if
Just
there was
asking
a
a
text amendment, that I could solve that issue. I know.
Well, so what would be the problem with amending it to allow the use in the 1 and 2? What is a 5 vehicle repair shop? Is that like 5 bays? What does that mean?
No, there are 5.
Oh, there's
There
5.
are
I thought you
five.
were talking about
Yeah.
5. Oh, there's 5
We've
vehicle repair
identified
shops. Okay.
Yes,
five.
not 5.
I thought you were going by the number of
No.
vehicles that are up on lifts. Okay, sorry. Or is that in there? Suppose you want to put a, I don't know.
A
Suppose you
6
wanna-
vehicle up? No.
Suppose you want to put a Midas shop.
How about it?
Midas shop in C2 would be allowed.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
The,
Thanks, Jay.
On,
You're
on
welcome.
32, where Fleming, but further south Heights, is that, what is that? Is that C2? Across from Freedom Firehouse? On 32 on the same side? 'Cause you have
What's the
Freedom
use, though?
Automobile-
Is that automobile
that-
service?
Is that the
A lot of
transmission
that-
place?
No, it's Freedom Auto. It's next
Oh.
to the Highs,
Oh.
south
Oh,
of that.
next to the high, south of.
Yeah.
Across from the Sykesville
Freedom
Fire.
Auto. And I was just curious if that's fitting into this category.
I'd have to double check. I don't know right off the top of my head, but
Okay.
I'll look into it.
I think in our theme here of trying to get rid of that non-conforming
Yeah.
word, that would make sense here to allow it to C1 and 2. That's what I think.
I agree.
Allow in C1?
Yeah? To allow it to C1 and 2.
Second option.
I think option 2 is the one there. That's what I think. But, I mean, I know we talk about that a little bit again, Ed, with C1 and the way in which it could be up against whatever, but, you know.
You could make that a conditional use if you want.
In the
Could.
C1.
You
and
could make it
propose-
conditional in 1.
Just like that.
and allow it in two.
Allow in C2.
I'd like to see allowed in two
Yeah.
and.
And conditional in one?
Conditional in
Correct.
one, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's a
and allowing the
compromise.
one that's
Because
existing
C1 could
to be there.
against a neighborhood, and
Yeah.
a smaller
Yeah,
lot.
because if it's
Yeah.
right up against, you're right, if it's right up
Right.
against the same thing with
Yep.
the last
Yep.
example.
But I will say, a lot of our C1s are in rural villages, so it is next to residential, but also the rural villages lend themselves well to
And that's fine. but
this
that-
more
Yeah.
rural service
Yeah.
that's provided. So I'm just letting
No,
you
and-
all know,
and-
just to
and
throw
that-
it out
And
there.
that's good, but that allows a conditional use to be permitted
Yeah.
when it's defined that way. But we gotta look at the entire county, and my concern is that, again, allowing it just carte blanche next to residential areas causes a lot of friction. Let's make it conditional where a decision maker has to be put into process, so,
Conditions for C1.
yeah,
Yeah,
Allowed in
conditional for
C2.
C1, permitted in C2.
yeah, I agree.
Now, in
And-
fairness to this one business, I guess it's in C1, do they get a notice from us and then,
No.
Well, they were informed,
Right, they got letters, I mean, but they,
but as far as that they've now become non-conforming.
But I think allowing them, just like
Or
we
that they
have
need a
with the
conditional
others.
They'd be conditional, so they would
have to come.
have to come forward.
Yeah, they're gonna have to come in now if this
Right.
holds.
Right.
Yeah.
And go through the process.
Right.
That's a
But they
whole
could
lot
s-
better than non-conforming.
Right,
Yeah.
they can,
That's
they're
if
still
they wanna-
recognized.
If they want to expand, or if, I mean, if they stay the size they are,
They can just do whatever.
they're non-conforming, they don't need to do anything.
well, that's what I was getting
But
at.
if
But if they
they're
wanna
going
do
to
something like-
expand the business, then
Right.
they would have to come in for,
Right.
an expansion of a non-conforming.
I just didn't want to see some small businessman a
Or
year from now down the
conditional,
road after this is changed,
Right.
be in violation of something.
No, they
you know.
wouldn't, and they could come in for their conditional use at
Okay,
any
that- I'm
time,
fine with
so.
that.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving right along. 8.
This was in response to one business owner who asked that we bring this to your attention. Motor freight terminal is currently permitted by right in the BG, IR, and IG districts. It's proposed to be prohibited in the new commercial districts. There is one acre property currently being used for this purpose in the IR district that would become non-conforming in the I1 unless a conditional use approval is sought. And he has objected to becoming non-conforming or having to get a conditional use. So we promised him we would bring this to your attention.
So say that again. He's
Currently permitted in the IR.
Okay.
And he's operating that way.
All
But
right.
he will become conditional in the new I1. And he doesn't want to be conditional and he doesn't want to be non-conforming. He would like to remain
Permitted.
permitted.
So he would like number 2.
He would like number 2.
Well, what's the impact if he's conditional?
He has to,
Come in.
Well, he has to come in
either
if
can
he
remain
wants to,
non-conforming
or
or come in.
if there's an adjustment to, then he would come in requesting the adjustment.
The current property, it has very little, we went and investigated, it has very little improvements to the property. It's just a gravel parking area.
The
No
trucks
fen-
are parked
Yeah,
on.
trucks are parked on, no fencing or any other improvements at this time.
You know, the challenge is that to make adjustments on single-use cases, what is the impact for future use of properties? That's what bothers me. And I gotta be, you know, good for the goose, good for the gander. And I'm looking at the gander, you know. I wanna appeal to the goose, you know, and say, yes, you're fine. And they are. This
Right.
gentleman is fine the way he has his business right now. So why make adjustments because of potential effects for future use? That's what the concern is, you know. I don't understand why we would want to change this. If he's fine and it's conditional use, so it gives him even an opportunity to further develop his property. He just has to justify it. So, I don't know.
But if he wants to expand, then he's caught here, right?
No,
No, he can under
he
non-conforming.
comes in,
Stand under either conditional use or non-conforming. It just has to go through a
Yep.
process.
But actually, there's properties on both sides of him are
Yep.
being used for other uses.
Yeah, I mean, it's
hard
tight
for me to
fit.
picture him expanding beyond his acre.
so in other words,
I
he,
could be wrong.
yeah, the probability is not there that he would change.
Yes.
I don't know if he wants to sell the property then, as a business as it is.
Okay.
That
Yep.
would be fine.
Yeah. But if we allow this further and permitted, then other properties, we would be allowing this, and
Be
that,
opening
you know,
up a whole can of worms,
Right.
I think, in the I-1.
right,
And I'm not so sure I wanna go there,
Right.
just because somebody says, I don't wanna come in.
yeah, exactly.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he's got what he wants. He has properties in use, it's conditional, and like you said, the probability of him changing is not that probable, so, and if he does, all he has to do is come in. It's conditional use, so why change? And I appreciate addressing it, because
Yes.
he wants it to be addressed. I think we are addressing it, and keep it status quo.
See, like number one,
So
Yeah.
continue
I
with
think
one.
we should keep it at one, because I just think it opens up a whole
Right.
lot of stuff if we
Yeah.
do it. So,
Okay, number 9, accessory fertilizer sales and storage. Currently, this use, fertilizer sales and storage, is not regulated as an accessory use in any of the zoning districts. It is a conditional use in the ag, though, and a pass-through to the BG, but that's as a principal use. This is just addressing it as accessory. The new code proposes that accessory sales of bulk fertilizer in the C2 and C3 districts require approval by the zoning administrator. There's at least one long-standing garden center up in Hampstead in the C2 district that would be affected by this, that would have to come in and get zoning administrator approval for his bulk fertilizer sales, accessory sales. Again, this was something we told this gentleman we would bring to your attention.
So if you delete the requirement for the zoning administrator, it's no regulation on it at all.
Right.
Becomes a free-for-all.
which, from a public safety standpoint, I have a problem with.
It's fertilizer,
No,
stored, small amounts, not in large.
doesn't matter. It's pretty volatile stuff, in whatever capacity it's in. It can be, I know.
Well, you mean like the
firsthand.
methane, the
Well, I mean,
fermenting,
if it
or?
kept, for some reason, there's an incident, and that stuff loves to burn, and it also
Oh,
loves to
gotcha.
flash. But, I don't know, I just would hate to see it where there's just willy-nilly allow anybody to do whatever they want with fertilizer.
Yeah, well, 2 or 3, maybe 4 properties that deal with this in the county.
We've only identified one, but it's not that easy to identify. We heard from this particular
Particular
business.
person.
Because it's hard to know who's doing bulk fertilizer sales.
And this one's in the
I-
county, it's not in the, it's not in
Yeah,
Hampstead?
it's in the county.
Down county. And you could put a couple of them out of business here.
If they have to come in and get non-conforming?
Well,
Is-
if they have to,
I mean, why would we put somebody out of business
Zoning
just to come in and get
administrator
it?
approval is
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, I mean, I don't,
a couple of them are very concerned about this.
Well, this is these are just accessory uses. This is not, so their main business is something else. I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
this is an
Okay.
accessory business.
Right. Right.
what would prompt you to have, if Steve Wance came in and he's been selling fertilizer with two.
Oh, I'd disapprove that right away.
Well, let me get rid of that. So if Dick Weaver came, oh, that's bad too.
That even too, I mean.
If no, anyway, if an individual came in and that individual's been selling fertilizer for, 50 years, and he keeps 4 pallets of fertilizer there, what would keep
Bags
you
of
from?
fertilizer
Yeah.
or loose fertilizers?
Well,
Bulk.
Well, bulk.
That would more than likely be a loose type fertilizer.
Okay,
product.
so what would keep you from saying, well, you can't do that anymore, if I had to come in and get a non-conforming use?
What would keep me from,
Not
No,
a
you don't get
non-conforming
come in
use,
and- yeah.
just zoning administrator approval.
For the bulk.
For the bulk.
for the bulk.
which is the unbagged,
Okay,
it's
so
just
that's a
in
bad
bins.
example. All right. I'm trying to.
Basically, if someone came in and I think, and like I say, every case is gonna be very individual and very specific to that case. But if they're doing bulk sales and they have a lot of fertilizer and they're smack dab in the middle of a neighborhood or up against some houses or something like that, where, yeah, it could be, you know, nice size hazard.
Mhm.
That
There's
might
also-
be reasons to say, no, you can't do it.
Yeah, there's also MDE requirements for the runoff for that
Yes,
stuff
there
too,
is.
which is huge.
Right, but like I say, I mean, if you're in the middle of a business district, okay, if it goes up, I mean, the whole district goes up, but,
Right.
you know, protecting the residents, if it was, like I say, in next to a community and there was a whole bunch of houses there or
Right.
something.
Yeah, I can see
I
that.
think that would be one time to think about not approving it.
So you're proposing that it's allowed to be used in C2, C3 districts,
Yes.
which would allow this owner to be conforming.
Well, they would require approval of the zoning administrator.
That's the way the
Yeah.
proposal's currently written. So if you made no change to the
Mhm.
code right now, that's, I'm sorry, not the code, but the proposed text.
Just leave it at number one.
Yeah, I think there should be some sort of checks and balances with bulk fertilizer.
Yeah.
I truly do.
And just let you, something like that type of decision that would involve some type of public safety.
Right.
That's one thing I would definitely check with our
Right.
public safety department to see what their opinion is and what they say. It just wouldn't be a blank decision on my own part.
Right, I know that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so number one. Yeah.
Yeah, well then I'd say leave it the way it is, let it number one.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Think you guys go with that?
Yes, sir.
Do we want to continue? We had until 12 today. Do you want to try to do one more? Okay. All right.
No?
We will pick up with 10 then when,
What's that?
10, 11, we only got 4 to go.
And that's what my number is.
Burned out? You haven't been here 2 hours.
I've been agreeing with Weaver, so I'm not thinking of it.
I didn't want anyone to get hangry.
Are the last 4, I mean, I know, are the last 4 gonna,
Going smoothly.
are they gonna,
I think 13 will probably have some discussion on, and definitely 14 will have some discussion on.
okay, well then that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Then let's call it a day and we'll
And
kick
we'll-
it back in and,
And we need to pick up back with contractor equipment, and we'll give
Yeah.
you a list of, and a
Right.
map of where those businesses are for our Thursday discussion.
yeah, just to make sure that we're in the right place with that decision, that's all. So, okay,
Before everyone adjourns, if I may, and Dave Bauer, Sox, I'm here.
so we can't do that, Dave, I'm sorry. I mean, you can talk to us individually, but in a work session, there's,
I'm just here to present you with a letter from a committee of
give it to us
Bar
after
Association.
it's over, yeah.
And there's a
Okay.
copy for everyone here.
That's fine, thanks,
We'll
okay.
get it through this, and then get it to the commissioner.
All right, anything else today?
That's all from staff that we have for today.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Eisenberg.
This is a work session,
Staff.
I need a motion. We didn't,
Sure.
okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Good, thanks.
That was quick.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Because not only you'll
Hey,
Pardon me? No, especially you, you're not allowed.
well, it's almost,
That's what I just said.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
we should
goodness.
get help because I can't get out of it.
and I don't, the Warners are out.
You're back in here.
That's why I'm saying I'm over flip-flops downstairs. I'm doing so much better in the last 2 weeks. I feel like I can start out all well shops next time.
Yeah, but we want to make it easier.
Yes, yes.
But
Yeah, I've seen it.
we're gonna